Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How Reckitt Benckiser is Creating a Better Business Through Innovation. I'm Lucinda Broad, and I'm one of the community managers here at 2 Degrees, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. I'm joined today by Dave Chalice and Laura McGonigal of Reckitt Benckiser, who are going to be presenting today. Now, just a few technical points before we get going. At the end of the session, we're going to have a Q&A session, and you can type your questions to me at any point in the Q&A box, which you'll find on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. For any technical problems, like audio problems if you can't hear properly, please use the chat box to send me a message. So just type your message in and select to send the message to the host, and I'll get back to you. So I'm now going to hand over to Dave for the first part of today's session. Over to you, Dave.
Much. Right, thank you for joining today. What we're going to do is have a quick look through RB's new sustainability strategy, which we launched in 2012, and have a particular focus on sustainable innovation, so how we have embedded sustainability, particularly into our product development process. And our strategy is much broader than that, but that's the focus for today. I'm Dave, and I look after sustainability at RB, and I'm here with Laura, who's responsible for sustainability communications. I've been at RB for 2 years, and Laura about 1 year, so we're still relatively new to the company, and what we've done over the last couple of years is really try to bring all of the different elements of sustainability together in a consistent sustainability strategy, and are now working on embedding that throughout the business. In case some of you aren't too familiar with RB, you might not know our name, but you probably know some of our brands, including Durex, Dettol, Air Wick and Finish. We've got 19 power brands, which are on the screen, about 36,000 employees, 10 billion net revenue, and our products are sold in 200 markets. And so we're a global health, hygiene and home company. To start off, I want to talk a little bit about, not just about sustainability, but about our business strategy. In early 2012, with our new CEO, we launched a new vision, purpose and business strategy, which really informed our approach to sustainability. The new business strategy was particularly around growth in emerging markets, and the purpose really informed our sustainability approach. The purpose is to make a difference by giving people innovative solutions for healthier lives and happier homes. And we talk a lot about healthier lives and happier homes in everything that we do in RB, including sustainability. So what we did, as that process was developing, we were considering the global megatrends affecting the world. We thought about the sustainability megatrends as part of that. And in particular, we were considering, in the development of our new plans, those megatrends where we felt that RB could make a real difference.
So one of the trends that we looked at was growth of emerging markets. As Dave mentioned, we really wanted to grow in emerging markets as part of our business, and we recently restructured by major consumer clusters, and therefore created 2 areas, LAPAC and RUMEA, that we want to grow by 50%, or so that they become 50% of our business by 2050. 6 of the top 10 economies in 2050 are currently emerging markets, and because of this, it's really important that this formed a large part of our strategy. Increasing water scarcity was another one that was really important to the vision and the purpose. 900 million people do not have access to clean and safe water today, and by 2025, 2/3 of the world's population will live in areas with significant water shortages. Also, 15 of our power brands, which you saw earlier, contain water, and around half of them need water to use, and all of them, of course, need water to produce. Also, we're seeing increasing water scarcity in the very areas in which we want to grow. The picture that you see here was taken by one of our R&D teams when they were visiting India, and it just shows that, in areas where there is water scarcity, that consumers are looking for different ways to conserve water, and all of these different trends kind of contribute to how we have developed our strategy. You've probably heard that more people have a mobile phone than a toilet, and also, 1 million children globally are killed each year from diarrhea and similar diseases. And several of our power brands can have a positive impact on some of these trends. Within our three categories, so health, hygiene, and home, health and hygiene take precedence, and our goal is for the revenues to be 72% of our core by 2015. So basically, we're now growing in hygiene, which has more water-intensive products, and we're expanding in emerging markets, which are often more water scarce. So all of this comes down to how we set our strategy around several big goals. The new big goal that we're looking at is a 1/3 decrease in water impacts by 2020. And we're also looking at having 1/3 of our net revenue come from more sustainable products by 2020. And we'll go into what we mean by more sustainable products later on. Before we launched Better Business earlier this year, or in 2012, we had announced that between 2007 and 2011, we reduced our carbon emissions per dose by 20%. And we're continuing to build on that by looking at a further reduction in our carbon footprint by 1/3. Finally, we are partnering with Save the Children to deliver a vision of stopping diarrhea being the world's biggest killer of children under 5 by 2020. So our strategy is organized into 3 key pillars that will help us meet our 4 big goals. These are healthier communities, better design, and better production. And today we're really going to focus on better design, but we do have specific targets in each of these areas. Healthier communities looks at how some of our brands, Dettol, Lysol, Mortein, Durex, and Harpic, are all positioned to fight disease and deliver health and hygiene education and behavior change. And better production really looks at health and safety and generally using less resources in our production processes. And innovation is a key part of all 3 of these pillars. However, like I said, we're going to focus on better design and how we're creating products that will use less water and less energy throughout the life cycle. I'll pass it to Dave.
Okay, so starting off with water impact. We spent about 6 months assessing our water impact. We started off by looking at our water footprint across the whole company, so all of our brands, all of our factories, all of our markets worldwide, and we assessed our water footprint. And what that showed us was actually most of the physical water footprint occurred in raw materials and packaging. And what we next did was then think about water scarcity, in particular with our business strategy around growing our business in emerging markets, some of which are very scarce. We wanted to apply a scarcity factor to that. And so we re-looked at our water footprint with a water scarcity factor included. So to give an example, 1 litre of water in Canada, when you take into account that Canada is not very water scarce, that might only count as half a litre, for example. So we applied those factors across our water footprint, and it came up with the result that you can see on the chart above, which actually flipped around our impacts. So the vast majority of our water impact, including water scarcity, is in the consumer use of our products. And that's really important to help guide our innovation strategy. The way that we constructed this means that we actually now have information on the different types of consumer use and their water impacts. So if you look at the pie chart at the bottom of the slide, the largest chunk of that is in hand washing. So this helps us understand that in certain key product categories we need to develop less water intense products. One thing we also looked at with this was not just the different types of products, but where we're selling them. And India is the country with the biggest water impact. So overall, hand washing in India is our biggest kind of chunk. And that's really important for us for a number of reasons. One of which, we sell Dettol bar soap and hand soap there, And Dettol is one of the most trusted brands in India, and that's really important that we maintain that. India is also a key market for RB, and it's going to be one of the big drivers of the company's growth. So this kind of information isn't just useful for sustainability reporting and for the sustainability team, it gets fed into our business strategy and our product development strategy. We don't want to forget about carbon though. This is our heritage and our big focus, as Laura mentioned before. We achieved our Carbon 20 goal 8 years ahead of schedule, which was fantastic, and we set a new goal. In the last year, we reduced our carbon footprint across our products by a further 5%. And again, we have this information, the same as for water, looking at the different types of consumer use and where they're really driving the biggest impacts. So for carbon, for example, automatic dishwashing using finished dishwashing tablets is our biggest carbon impact. And what this also allows us to do by drilling into the data in different ways is to understand the different types of raw material that have high carbon impact, as well as the different types of consumer use that have high impacts. So moving on to kind of what that means for the business and sustainable innovation. RB, like lots of companies, was very good at measuring impacts after the event and reporting on them. But what we wanted to do, and what was really important for us, and is a key part of our strategy, is to influence our product development earlier and earlier in the product development, so that ideally when there's an initial insight or idea before a product is even designed, we're thinking about sustainability and we're using sustainability as part of that. So what we did was develop a new sustainability calculator which our product developers can use. And you'll see 4 little gauges here, and so we consider that the four topics that are most important for us. On the left-hand side you have carbon and water, which link up with our big carbon and water goals. They're the 2 most important environmental topics for us. On the right-hand side there's packaging and ingredients, and these are the 2 topics that, broadly speaking, are most important to our consumers overall. So what we do is assess each product innovation for each 4 of these, and in order to count as a more sustainable innovation, it's a really simple rule. You've got to have at least 1 green and you can't have any reds. That's how it works. It's easy for us to explain to people who are developing products and easy for us to communicate within the business. One thing that is fantastic, and we're only just realizing how great this is the new tool which really allows much quicker feedback on product development decisions. So what we've got on screen at the moment is a little screenshot of one part of our calculator. So what a product developer will do is they will build their new products, or they will pick an existing product and change it. And in the grey box, which is blocked out, there's all the list of different ingredients that are going into the formulation of this product. What's great about this is that the different levels, the different types of ingredients, as well as the different amounts of the ingredients in the product can be changed, and you can see in real time what the impact is on carbon and water, as well as your overall calculator status, whether it's more sustainable or not. And that's really useful for us because it's very quick. You know, RB moves at an extremely fast pace, and we can't wait 6 months for an LCA to be produced for every single product. It's just not practical, it's too expensive. So we designed this tool so that our R&D teams can play around with products, they can understand the impacts of their decisions, and just play around with things. And what we're finding is that, and what we're hoping, is that this is going to actually inspire our R&D teams to come up with even better innovations when they see, for example, that they are, have a 9% lower carbon impact for a certain product. They're encouraged to play around with things and see if they can still make a product that meets all of the technical needs in addition to the sustainability needs.
Great. So in this image here, you'll see a simplified version of our product development process. And as Dave mentioned, we're targeting for 100% of our innovations to be assessed by the Sustainable Innovation Calculator. However, a lot of this has historically occurred and continues to occur in the development stages. So we're encouraging our product developers to complete this calculator and kind of tinker and play around with it earlier and earlier in the process. And one of the ways that we've done this is so not only for them to put in a product that's going to be launched, but also any project that's at concept and feasibility stages, and continue to update it as it moves along the process from concept to launch. One way that we've done this is to provide various levels of training and guidance, and continuously develop, simple tools that will help our developers work, at the speed of the business and in a way that can easily fit into the way that they are working today. One of the main things that we did at the concept and feasibility stage is look to provide objectives and guidance. And these objectives have posed some challenges, which I will discuss as well. But one of the main challenges of these objectives is that we put in very specific targets, because we wanted to drive behavior that would really get people to use the calculator to make more sustainable products. However, some of these really specific targets have, because we're in such a target-obsessed culture, I suppose, we do also try to get people to think about not just meeting their sustainability targets, but really thinking about sustainability across all of their product developments. Another challenge was the speed, as Dave mentioned, of the development process. We have one of the highest innovation rates in the industry, and as such, this demands really user-friendly tools. And because innovation is coming from all kinds of different places across the business, we need to make sure that it's not only our research and development teams, but also our marketing teams and other teams that have access to this tool and can use it to collaborate. We recently brought the tool online, and we're developing some wiki capabilities to allow for that kind of real-time collaboration, so that our sustainability team, as well as the research and development teams and marketing teams, can work together to tweak a product to make it as sustainable as possible. Because marketing is a big influencer in the product development process, we've also seen a challenge in that marketing and R&D have different cultures and different drivers and influencers, and so we're looking at aligning performance objectives for marketing and research and development to ensure that they're working together on embedding sustainability into this process. So we have the objectives and guidance at the before a product even starts into development. As we mentioned, 100% of new product developments need to complete a calculator to see the impacts on carbon, water, packaging, and ingredients. And finally, all of this rolls up and helps us to look at our progress towards our net revenue goals. So we're working with our finance teams to ensure that we're able to really feed the progress on this back into the business in the language that they understand, which is net revenue, rather than only giving them progress on how we're doing on our carbon and water goals. Towards the launch end of the phase, you'll also see there's a little logo in the corner, and another thing that we're looking to do is to put this logo on pack so that our marketers also have another benefit coming from going through this process. At the moment, the logo will lead to a website that gives more information, but it's not something that will necessarily provide claims like this product has 50% less packaging. That won't come directly from the calculator, but will come from a more detailed analysis. So it's not as though once you complete a calculator, great, you can go ahead and put claims on pack. Those will all be vetted through a much more detailed process. Great. So one of the things I mentioned was, because we have these specific targets that drive behavior around making specific products more sustainable, we're also trying to encourage people to think about sustainability as an opportunity, and not just a way, to cut costs and that kind of thing. And we're doing this through helping our product developers to really look at sustainability as a new lens for which to put their regular innovation process through, so that they can look at really great sustainability insights that will help them to develop products that will meet the needs of consumers today and in the future. One of the ways that we're doing this is through something that we call Lab in a Bag, which is one of our research and development teams that goes into emerging markets and works directly with consumers to understand exactly how they use our products and what their needs, both from a sustainability and from a just regular product use, are, and feed those back into the development process. So the sustainability team is really working to bring together different parts of the research and development teams and capabilities to work towards a common agenda of products that are more sustainable and that our consumers will love. So one other thing that we are doing to really encourage more sustainable innovation at the genesis of new product development is by inspiring innovation in a few different ways. One thing that we've recently done is a global innovation challenge where we've asked colleagues throughout the business to come up with ideas for products that will use less water in the consumer use phase. We've also asked them to look for ideas that will reduce the amount of water used in various processes and in behavior change. But what we found is that we had a lot of really great ideas come out of it, and the good thing was that we had senior leadership endorse some of these projects so that we can show that, you know, even the smallest idea that's for a product, let's say, that's not coming from research and development can be explored if it's a good idea and something that will work for our consumers. So that's something that we've just done recently, and we're looking at starting to develop some of the ideas that came out of that project. Finally, what we found is that sometimes, you know, reducing water and reducing carbon isn't as motivating as something that's more people-oriented. And as I mentioned, one of our big goals was to deliver a vision to stop diarrhea being one of the biggest killers of children under 5. And recently, our research and development teams with other partners had a session to look at new products and new ideas and new business models to see how we can start to deliver this vision. And this purpose-driven innovation has really helped, I guess, to get people thinking about sustainability in a different way, and we can use these examples to inspire innovation in other parts of the business. So, in conclusion, basically, what we've done is first we measured the impacts across the business and across the life cycle so that we could then set goals and set our objectives for innovation. We then developed tools that could work at the speed of the business and work in our innovation process as it stands. We then embedded those tools into the product development process, provided training and set objectives with our product developers, and also feedback the information that comes from all of the calculators and all of the work that they've been doing. We then also are trying to, inspire and engage product developers and people across the business to think about sustainability as, a new lens for innovation. And finally, we will be measuring the results.
Great, thanks a lot, Laura. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Q&A session now. And as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to ask a question, please type it into the Q&A box that you'll find in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So we've got a first question here from Ran, who says, who ensures the environmental impacts of design decisions that the calculator reports on are accurate?
Okay, it's Dave here, and I'll start off by talking a little bit about kind of how the different elements fit together. We have what we call a TMS. We're full of acronyms here, like everywhere else, which is our Total Measurement System, and that is our company-level carbon and water footprinting system. And that provides the life cycle splits that you saw earlier on, and it's managed by or using a large access database. Inside that access database is the library data, so all of the environmental impact data that is then sucked out and included in the calculator. So that overall process is that's led by some consultants who we've been working with since 2006, and each year that's assured by an external group, most recently Ernst & Young. And so because the new calculator is so new, we've not gone through that process with them. That will happen near the end of the year. And what our plan is to assure not only the library data, but how the calculator works itself, how it's applied by our R&D teams, as well as one thing which we didn't spend a lot of time talking about today was the net revenue from sustainable products goal. So basically this is super important for us because each time a product is classed as a more sustainable innovation, it is tagged and then measured by our finance teams so that we can measure the progress we're making towards that goal of having a third of our net revenue from more sustainable products by 2020. Hopefully that answers the question, but kind of in summary, it's getting an external group to go through, and in addition to that, we have a core sustainability team as well as a network of internal sustainability champions who are all R&D professionals who are trained on the use of the calculator to make sure this works well in practice. One thing I will say though is this is not intended to provide on-pack claims. The whole point of having a quick and dirty process is to give us very quick feedback on the right decisions that we should make at a product level. You know, is this ingredient more sustainable than this other one? What kind of reduction in a level of an ingredient kind of makes it more sustainable? It's not there to provide detailed, substantiated claims. What we do is, if there's something that's interesting that pops out of the calculator, for example, 80% less carbon footprint for this particular product, a fantastic potential claim, what we'll do then is work in detail with our R&D teams and our legal teams to make sure that claim can be substantiated. So they're the different levels.
Great, thanks Dave. And we've got a few more questions around the calculator. So firstly, was it developed in-house or did you use consultants? And secondly, how did you achieve buy-in to the project in the first place?
Okay, so the first question, how was it developed? It was developed in partnership with consultants. We've been working with a company called URS since 2006, and we really act as one team now. So they interact with the different parts of the business independently, and we act as an extended team. That provided us with the basis of the kind of carbon and water process, and we've been working with Best Foot Forward on the calculator. It was important to us not to get just an off-the-shelf product, but to make something that was really specific to RB, because as I mentioned, we like to do things fast, and what we wanted was a really quick tool that was robust, but also allowed us to make those speedy decisions. The second question around buy-in was, this was a long process. We kicked off our sustainability strategy process at the end of 2011, and as I said at the start, we began this as we were thinking about the company's overall vision and purpose. Once that vision and purpose had been defined, we then kind of forged ahead with the specific elements of sustainability and how that was going to support the vision and purpose. So really there was buy-in from the start about the importance of sustainability in the vision and purpose. And when it comes to kind of rolling out and agreeing the specific targets, there are a number of levels. I mean, at the top, it's really important for us because our CEO is ultimately accountable and responsible for sustainability. You know, he has to be brought into these things, and so we work very closely with the CEO and the executive to develop the right targets. They were signed off by the board. And then what we've done to help drive this into the business is really think about the business and the individual parts and say, how do they work now? How might sustainability be integrated into their existing process rather than an additional thing to do? And then we will slot in sustainability at the right point there. It's also, as Laura mentioned, RB is a really goal-focused company, and so actually getting buy-in is quite easy when you set a big target, because people immediately, when they're responsible for that, they just get on with it.
Mm-hmm. And also, when we launched the Sustainable Innovation Calculator, the announcement went out from our head of research and development, who sent out training, and all of the information, came directly from her, along with, excitement about the new tool and really encouraging people to use it as part of their regular process. So reiterating that it wasn't, an extra thing to do, but that the tool was built to work within the innovation process as it stands.
Sure. And we've got a question here from Pip, who says, how do you assess the environmental impact of each raw material? Do your suppliers provide detailed LCA information to you?
We use a combination of, we use an LCA database for most of our raw materials, and we also engage with specific suppliers. For example, when there's a raw material which is different, it doesn't appear in these databases, we will work with them to get the best assessment of that raw material, because you can imagine that quite a few of our ingredients are not standard raw materials, and so sometimes we'll make assumptions and assign them a kind of a generic LCA factor, and other times we'll work directly with the suppliers, and that's something that is going to be more and more important going forward. Now this process is bedded in, and now R&D are really thinking about the individual ingredients they're using. Everyone is becoming a lot more motivated to look at those specific ingredients, to work with the suppliers, and to update that library data set. So we've seen it starting to happen, and I think it will happen more and more and more, that we get that RB-specific or supplier-specific data in the calculator. But as I said, this is meant to be a quick and dirty tool. It's not designed for claim substantiation at a product level, so it's really there to give you that quick guidance. What we don't want to do is have, each time there's a new product or a new supplier, to be slowed down by spending 9 months negotiating with a new supplier about specific environmental impact data. We need to kind of make this work fast, and when we do have information, we'll feed it into that data set.
Great. Okay, so moving on, we've had a few questions around employee engagement. So the first question is from Zoe, who says, what would you say was the most successful activity you undertook to inspire and engage your employees and product developers?
The most successful activity probably is the one that I mentioned earlier, the Water Innovation Challenge. I think it was particularly successful because we had the announcements and the call for ideas come out from our senior leadership, who judged the ideas that came through, and we really put together, in-depth briefs on what we were looking for both product ideas, process innovation ideas, and consumer behavior change or employee behavior change ideas. And we're just now, about to start implementing these ideas, and we've already had a really great engagement from just asking for the ideas. And I think as we start to show and prove that we have taken them on board and that we're working with different teams to implement them, that it will be even more engaging moving forward.
Okay, and what would you say are your top tips for other businesses who are looking to engage their employees on their sustainability initiatives?
Top tips, well, I would say one of the big ones, which I mentioned, was kind of bringing it back to the purpose, and I think that's something that we often say, but because our big targets are reduce by 1/3, reduce carbon by 1/3, and reduce water by 1/3, that becomes, that's not overly engaging. So our new ambition to work with Save the Children to knock diarrhea off the list of diseases that are killing children under 5 is definitely a way to engage our employees by making water and sanitation and all of these issues that come together more real and we have a long-standing partnership with Save the Children, and it's something that everyone in the business is really excited about. So by tying water and some of these other issues into more of a people story, I think is one of the important things that we do. Another one is, I guess, the buy-in that Dave has already mentioned that's coming from senior leadership, is that it's not the sustainability team that's talking about these things. We always speak about sustainability through, I suppose, our senior leadership, and they get excited about it. They offer, rewards through our innovation challenge. Part of the reward is that we're actually going to be implementing the project, but we're also, of course, giving away some prizes along with it. So it's both a kind of purpose reward, but also a personal reward. We're trying to be as simple as possible in the way that we communicate these things. We think that the tool is working and will continue to work because it's, like we've already mentioned, it's really simple and easy to use. Any other top tips?
One thing that we were discussing as a team a couple of weeks ago after the water challenge was, I guess, not to be afraid of some of the sustainability cliches. When we were thinking about water as our big new focus area and the area that we wanted people really to start being creative around, the one thing the sustainability team said at the start was, we don't want the comms to be blue with big water droplets. But as we went along, actually talking to some people who weren't sustainability experts, it actually turned out that probably still was the right kind of creative approach for it. And I think as long as you can find interesting ways to reach people, like inside the lifts when people are going up to their offices, like as Laura shared in one of the photos earlier on, I don't think it matters too much if it appears too simple and too obvious, because I think simple and obvious is the best way to catch people's attention.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing I would add is that obviously it's different in every culture. What the best way to engage people will be different all the time. And for us, because we do have, quite a target-driven culture, that often works better than some other engagement techniques that would work really well in other companies. So it really depends. And we do have a strong culture that we tend to always, we always keep in mind when developing engagement campaigns.
Great, thanks. That's really useful. So we've got two more questions here, and if you do have any final questions, get them in quick, because we've got a few more minutes to address them. So the first question here is from Ram, who says, do design teams ever show resistance to using this tool? And if so, why?
I think the only resistance that we've seen is when people don't really understand what it is and what their role is, because they're confused about it. What we found is, because it's such a simple tool and because it's embedded in the product development process, actually there's not been that much resistance at all. This doesn't take months and months and months. It can be done very, very quickly. And what we've been finding as we chat to our R&D teams who are using the tools and testing it out, is that this just is another way for them to look at their products. It gives them more information on their products and a deeper understanding of the ingredients they're using. So it's not just about the consumer experience and what impact a particular ingredient might have on that, but it's also on sustainability. And so, these typically our R&D teams are very kind of data hungry, and they love to really understand more and more about their products. And so I think if you design the right tool, that it's quick, easy, simple, accurate, and it's embedded into the product development process, so it's not a kind of nice to have that you should do at the end. If people see that using this tool actually is important for them and their objectives, for their team, for the company and the overall leadership, and that it can actually help make better products, then they're going to be to use it.
Yeah.
So we've been quite surprised. I was expecting a little bit of pushback because it's another tool, it's another thing to use, but because it's so simple, it's been very widely accepted already.
Yeah, and another thing that we're trying to do is, so at the moment, our research and development teams are the ones that primarily use this tool, but as we move to a new online version of the tool, we're also encouraging marketers and I guess some of our less technical teams to use the tool as well. So we've designed it to have a few different views. One, when you're in the process of developing the product and you're putting in all the nitty-gritty details about the formulation of the product, that's one view, but you can also look at it from more of a bird's eye view just to see, is my product more sustainable, yes or no, and that will allow more people to kind of engage with the tool at different levels.
Okay, and we've got one last question here from Pip, who says, if this tool really is a quick and dirty tool, do you think it's okay to allow your marketers to use the logo on your external packaging?
Yes, so let me just explain. So this is, it's quick and dirty, but also robust, I will say, because it feeds out of our company level system, which is assured by EY. We are confident that the mechanism of this works well. It doesn't link directly to the on-pack communications. So, as I said earlier on, the on-pack communications is our new consistent way across our power brands to talk about sustainability in the broadest sense. That might include a claim around the product, saying that it's got less packaging or has a lower water impact, that kind of stuff. But that doesn't link directly from the calculator, if that makes sense. So the calculator gives you an indication of whether the product is more sustainable or not, and it gives you an indication where there might be a claim. If a marketeer wants to put that claim on pack, we then have to go through the full claim substantiation process to really delve into it and check that that's accurate. So it's by no means a kind of an automatic process, and that was really important to us because we understand there's a trade-off between speed and accuracy on this. We need to make sure, of course, that all of our product level and on-pack claims are absolutely robust.
Sure, thanks, Dave. And actually, we've got one last question here comes through from Sarah, who says, was the crowdsourcing you did through the Water Innovation Challenge also opened up to your supply chain or externally?
That's a good question. It wasn't at this point. As Dave mentioned, we're quite new into the strategy, and we really wanted to engage our employees first, just because they're the ones who will be also looking to engage suppliers. But it is something that we have discussed looking at.
We're currently looking at refreshing our open innovation platform and refreshing the sustainability challenges that are on there. So I think there'll be two ways that we do engage our supply chain and the outside world on these kinds of things. Number one is posting our big challenges on our open innovation platform, which is called IdeaLink. And the other way is we're having more and more meetings with our top suppliers, specifically on sustainability, to understand where those kind of new areas of innovation might be and where we can work together on those. We're starting slowly with kind of our biggest suppliers, and as that moves on, then we're going to get into more specific discussions with smaller suppliers. But at the moment, that process of supplier engagement is mostly facilitated, and the legwork is mainly done by the sustainability team, and so that limits the number of conversations that we can have, because we normally are present or are there supporting those conversations, even if it happens with one of our R&D leaders, for instance. What we'd like to see over the next few years is more and more of these conversations happening from commercial to commercial. So from our procurement department or our R&D teams with our suppliers, talking about sustainability. And so we know there's still some way to go for our internal teams to feel really confident that they understand the strategy, exactly what they should be doing with their suppliers before we can get to that point.
Okay, and one final one from Barbara. This will be the last question. Barbara says, if a product was shown to be less sustainable, i.e. red, by the tool, would that stop or delay the launch?
No. What we've done initially is not limit things. We had, as you can imagine, a really long and interesting debate with our leadership team about whether, if there's a red, that it shouldn't be launched. And what we wanted to do initially, while the calculator in this process is emerging, is to support and encourage more positive behaviours. So when marketeers or our product developers are making more sustainable choices, to encourage, support, reward those choices, rather than get people worried about and using sustainability as a constraint. I think what we hope is that as we go along with that positive approach, there'll be less and less reds. That's the idea. And that visibility of each product's individual assessment means that, of course, the sustainability team and the sustainability champions within the business, they look at each and every innovation to see whether that red can move to an amber, or whether that amber can move over to a green. But it's not there to stop everything. I think as we see, and as the business sees, more sustainable products with all greens becoming incredibly successful, that's again going to encourage the business to move in a more sustainable direction. So in a nutshell, we're not banning reds, but we see that they will be encouraged by the greens that they see elsewhere in the business.
Great. Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of today's session. So thank you very much, Laura and Dave, for your great presentation. That was really interesting, and for your great responses to the questions as well. So we've made a recording of this session, which I'll be posting on 2 Degrees either later today or tomorrow morning, and I'll email the link out to you once that's live. So thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you on another 2 Degrees webinar soon. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cool. That's all right.